Good evening, fellow explorers of profound biblical mysteries and the shadowy corners of ancient lore. Tonight, we journey into a narrative that bridges heaven and earth. A story of celestial beings whose actions fundamentally reshaped the course of early human history. The enigma of the Watchers. Their tale is etched into the very fabric of our oldest sacred texts. It offers a glimpse into a cosmic drama that unfolded long before the familiar stories of nations and patriarchs. Imagine a world just after creation, a nascent humanity walking the earth, and an unseen spiritual realm actively interacting with it. The concept of angels, God's messengers and servants, is familiar to most. But among these celestial beings, early traditions speak of a particular group, designated as Watchers. Their very name suggests vigilance, observation, perhaps even guardianship over the nascent human race. Yet, the story takes a dark turn, introducing a rebellion far more profound and disturbing than any human transgression. Our central question tonight is one that has echoed through theological debates for millennia. Who were these Watchers? Were they faithful divine guardians who merely observed the unfolding of human history? Or were they a specific class of fallen angels who tragically betrayed their sacred trust, instigating an unprecedented corruption on earth? This is not simply a matter of academic curiosity. It is a quest to understand the spiritual forces at play in the antediluvian world, the profound reasons for God's catastrophic judgment, and the enduring nature of evil itself. We will meticulously examine every biblical clue, primarily focusing on the tantalizing verses in Genesis 6. We will then expand our lens to ancient Jewish interpretations, most notably the incredibly detailed narratives found in the non-canonical Book of Enoch, a text that, while not universally accepted as scripture, profoundly influenced early Jewish and Christian thought. Then, we will turn to the New Testament, where the apostles Peter and Jude offer powerful canonical support for understanding these beings as fallen angels. We will explore the dire consequences of their actions, the birth of the Nephilim and the spiraling wickedness that led to the global flood. We will even consider the fascinating counterpoint in the Book of Daniel, where Watchers are portrayed as divine agents of God's will. Finally, we will contemplate the enduring legacy of this ancient saga, recognizing its relevance to our understanding of spiritual warfare in our own time. Prepare to peel back the veil between worlds and confront the chilling reality of the Watchers. Our deep dive into the Watchers begins, as it must, with the sparse yet incredibly potent verses found in Genesis chapter 6, verses 1 through 4. These verses serve as the foundational stone of this profound mystery, providing just enough information to provoke questions that echo through the ages, ultimately leading to the Great Flood. The text presents an unsettling scene. When man began to multiply on the face of the land and daughters were born to them, the sons of God saw that the daughters of man were attractive, and they took as their wives any they chose. Then the Lord said, "My spirit shall not abide in man forever, for he is flesh. His days shall be 120 years. The Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterward, when the sons of God went in to the daughters of man, and they bore children to them. These were the mighty men who were of old, the men of renown." The brevity of this passage is striking, almost jarring. In a text that meticulously records genealogies and origins, these sons of God appear abruptly, engage in a startling act, and vanish just as quickly. The primary point of contention, the very kernel of our mystery, lies in the identity of these sons of God. For centuries, theological thought has diverged into two main interpretive streams. One prominent view, often referred to as the Sethite interpretation, posits that the sons of God refer to the human descendants of Seth, Adam's righteous son, through whom the line of godly individuals was perpetuated. According to this perspective, the daughters of mankind would represent the descendants of Cain, Adam's rebellious son, whose lineage was marked by wickedness and violence. The intermarriage between these two lines, the Sethites and the Cainites, would represent a tragic apostasy, a spiritual compromise that led to the corruption of the entire human race. The Nephilim in this view would then simply be the powerful, notorious offspring of these mixed human marriages, perhaps tyrants or warlords, but still entirely human. This interpretation emphasizes the profound depths of human depravity that escalated before the flood, and it highlights the dangers of spiritual compromise within a community. It resonates with the desire to keep the spiritual and physical realms distinct, avoiding complex angelic interactions. However, the other dominant interpretation, often called the angelic interpretation, holds that the sons of God were indeed celestial beings, specifically angels. This view draws compelling support from other Old Testament passages where the phrase sons of God explicitly refers to angelic beings, such as in the Book of Job, where the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord. In this understanding, these angels, whom later traditions would identify as the Watchers, willfully descended to earth. They abandoned their spiritual station and engaged in illicit, unnatural relations with human women. Their offspring, the Nephilim, were therefore hybrid beings, a grotesque fusion of angelic and human natures, resulting in powerful, monstrous individuals. This act is seen as a profound violation of divine order, a cosmic rebellion that introduced a unique form of corruption and violence onto the earth, far beyond the scope of ordinary human sin. The Nephilim, being men of renown, might even imply they were the heroes or demigods of ancient pagan myths, the giants and powerful figures whose legends pervade ancient cultures, a perversion of God's original creation. The sheer ambiguity of Genesis 6:1-4 is what gives it such enduring power and fuels such extensive inquiry. It opens a window into a pre-flood world where the lines between the natural and supernatural were frighteningly blurred. A world teetering on the brink of utter moral collapse, ripe for a cleansing judgment. The identity of these sons of God is not merely academic. It shapes our understanding of the scale of evil that necessitated God's radical intervention. To truly immerse ourselves in the narrative of the Watchers, we must step beyond the concise verses of Genesis and venture into the rich, intricate tapestry of the Book of Enoch. This ancient Jewish apocalyptic text, though not included in most modern biblical canons, held immense authority and influence among early Jewish communities and, significantly, among many early Christian writers. Its narratives filled in the gaps left by Genesis 6, providing a sprawling, vivid account of these celestial beings. The Book of Enoch, particularly its first section, aptly named the Book of the Watchers, details their origin and catastrophic fall. It presents the Watchers as a specific class of angels, angelic beings dispatched to earth with a divine mandate to, as their name suggests, watch over humanity. They were celestial observers, guardians of a sort. However, their divine purpose was tragically perverted. Approximately 200 of these Watchers, a rebellious contingent led by prominent figures such as Semahaza and Azazel, succumbed to a forbidden desire. They were captivated by the beauty of human women. In a shocking act of collective rebellion, they swore an oath to one another and descended upon Mount Hermon, a historically significant mountain in the ancient Near East. Here, they committed to carrying out their illicit intentions, solidifying their pact of defiance against God. The Book of Enoch then describes the immediate and devastating consequence of their union. They took human wives and begat monstrous offspring, the Nephilim. These were not merely large humans. Enoch describes them as giants of immense stature, reaching heights of 300 cubits, though this is likely symbolic hyperbole to emphasize their gigantic nature. These Nephilim possessed insatiable appetites, quickly consuming all of humanity's agricultural produce. When the earth could no longer sustain their hunger, they turned upon humanity itself, engaging in cannibalism and filling the world with unimaginable violence, bloodshed, and tyranny. This was a profound corruption of the natural order, a perversion of creation itself. Yet, the Watchers' transgressions did not end with their illicit procreation. The Book of Enoch asserts they committed a second, equally grave sin. They imparted forbidden knowledge to humanity. Azazel, for instance, taught humans the art of metallurgy, specifically how to forge swords, shields, and other weapons of war, as well as the creation of ornaments, cosmetics, and dyes, leading to vanity and conflict. Other watchers taught astrology, divination, sorcery, the cutting of roots for magical purposes, and the decoding of celestial signs for illicit purposes. This influx of dark, supernatural knowledge further accelerated humanity's moral decay, empowering their sinful inclinations and leading to even greater injustice, deception, and spiritual defilement. This was not merely the passing of earthly skills, but the imparting of arcane, spiritual knowledge that bypassed God's intended order and led humans further away from Him. God's response to this unprecedented, angelic rebellion and the widespread corruption it spawned was decisive and severe. The archangels Michael, Gabriel, Raphael, and Uriel were dispatched with divine judgment. The fallen watchers were apprehended and bound in chains of gloomy darkness within the abyss, specifically a place called Tartra, awaiting a final eternal judgment. Their monstrous offspring, the Nephilim, were destined for destruction, often meeting violent ends at the hands of one another, or in the catastrophic cleansing of the flood. The Book of Enoch presents the Watchers as a direct and primary cause for the extreme violence, corruption, and spiritual degradation that permeated the antediluvian world, ultimately necessitating God's decision to bring the global flood. This detailed narrative offers a compelling explanation for the brevity of Genesis 6, suggesting it refers to a tradition that was well understood and widely circulated among its original Jewish audience. It paints a chilling picture of cosmic rebellion and its devastating impact on human history. While the Book of Enoch provides the expansive narrative of the Watchers' rebellion, our canonical scriptures contain precise, yet powerful, references that lend significant weight to the interpretation of the sons of God in Genesis 6 as fallen angels. These references, often brief and potent, serve as a vital canonical endorsement of the core elements of the Enochian tradition. The New Testament letters of Peter and Jude are particularly illuminating in this regard, acting as key interpretive lenses. Let's turn to 2 Peter chapter 2, verses 4 and 5. For if God did not spare angels when they sinned, but cast them into hell and committed them to chains of gloomy darkness to be kept until the judgment, if He did not spare the ancient world, but preserved Noah, a herald of righteousness, with 7 others, when He brought a flood upon the world of the ungodly. Here, Peter's wording is remarkably precise and impactful. He clearly links the sin of a specific group of angels with their immediate imprisonment in chains of gloomy darkness in hell. Crucially, he then immediately transitions to God's judgment upon the ancient world by means of the flood during Noah's time. This direct, chronological, and causal connection between the sin of these angels, their imprisonment, and the subsequent flood is highly significant. It strongly implies that the sin of these angels was intrinsically tied to the conditions that led to the Great Deluge, an implication that aligns perfectly with the Watchers' narrative from the Book of Enoch. The nature of their transgression, though not explicitly detailed here by Peter, is clearly grave enough to warrant such severe and specific confinement. The letter of Jude, a text known for its conciseness and directness, offers an even more explicit and compelling reference in verse 6, and the angels who did not stay within their own position of authority, but left their proper dwelling, He has kept in eternal chains under gloomy darkness until the judgment of the great day. Jude's description here resonates powerfully with the narrative of the Watchers found in Enoch. The phrase, "did not stay within their own position of authority," directly speaks to their abandonment of their assigned celestial station. The act of left their proper dwelling, their heavenly abode, precisely describes the Watchers' descent to earth to engage in forbidden unions. This transgression was not merely a spiritual fall, like Lucifer's prideful rebellion, but a specific act of abandoning their assigned sphere and physical location to pursue illicit desires. Jude then immediately draws a parallel, stating, "Just as Sodom and Gomorrah and the surrounding cities, which likewise indulged in sexual immorality and pursued unnatural desire, serve as an example by undergoing a punishment of eternal fire." This comparison is crucial. By likening the angels' sin to the unnatural desire and sexual immorality of Sodom and Gomorrah, Jude strongly implies that the angels' transgression also involved a form of sexual aberration, thereby reinforcing the Genesis 6 interpretation of angelic human cohabitation. This canonical evidence provides powerful, concise validation for the detailed accounts found in texts like the Book of Enoch, firmly establishing the concept of fallen angels whose specific sin led to their unique imprisonment and contributed to the pre-flood corruption. These New Testament verses are not merely obscure references. They serve as canonical anchors, demonstrating that the early apostles and their audiences understood Genesis 6 not as a metaphorical account of human intermarriage, but as a literal description of angelic rebellion. They confirm that this particular transgression by fallen angels, the Watchers, was a significant contributing factor to the extreme wickedness that necessitated God's devastating judgment of the flood. These verses reveal that the ancient world was not only battling human depravity, but also grappling with a unique, cosmic spiritual corruption that had breached the very fabric of creation. While the prevailing narrative surrounding the Watchers often centers on their rebellion and fall, it is crucial to acknowledge that the term Watcher itself is not exclusively reserved for these nefarious beings in biblical literature. The canonical Book of Daniel presents a fascinating counterpoint, portraying Watchers in a distinctly positive and unequivocally divine context, serving as faithful agents of God's will. This distinction is vital for a comprehensive understanding of the term and angelic hierarchy. In Daniel chapter 4, we find King Nebuchadnezzar recounting a prophetic dream, a vision of a majestic tree that is suddenly decreed to be cut down by a celestial authority. The king hears a voice declare, "A watcher, a holy one, came down from heaven." He proclaimed aloud and said thus, "Chop down the tree and lop off its branches, but leave the stump of its roots in the earth, till 7 periods of time pass over him." The voice then explicitly states the origin of this judgment. The decision is by the decree of the Watchers, the demand by the word of the holy ones, to the end that the living may know that the Most High rules the kingdom of mankind and gives it to whom he will and sets over it the lowest of men. Here, the Watcher is unequivocally a holy one, an angel acting in full obedience and alignment with divine justice. The plural Watchers are presented as part of God's heavenly court, participating in his sovereign decrees concerning the affairs of men and nations. They are not rebels. They are integral to the execution of God's will, ensuring that human rulers understand his ultimate authority over all earthly kingdoms. These Watchers are clearly divine guardians, righteous angels who faithfully carry out God's judgments and purposes on earth. They are his messengers, his enforcers, and his observers, entrusted with overseeing human affairs under his direct command. This portrayal indicates that Watcher is a classification or function within the angelic hierarchy, and it encompasses both faithful and unfaithful beings. This positive portrayal of Watchers in Daniel serves several important purposes. It highlights that the concept of celestial beings observing and influencing earthly events was a recognized part of ancient Israelite cosmology. More importantly, it underscores the profound tragedy of the fallen Watchers. It was a specific group of these Watchers, those identified in the Book of Enoch as led by Samahazah and Azazel, who chose to rebel and abandon their sacred mandate. They corrupted their very purpose, transforming from righteous observers and guardians into instruments of profound spiritual and physical corruption. Their sin was not simply a fall from grace, but a betrayal of their very nature and divine commission. The existence of these holy Watchers in Daniel serves as a powerful reminder that angelic beings, much like humanity, are creatures of free will. Their choices, whether of obedience or rebellion, carry immense cosmic weight. The term itself suggests a role of active divine oversight and careful observation, a responsibility that was tragically abused by those who fell. This nuanced understanding prevents us from demonizing an entire class of angelic beings and instead directs our focus to the specific act of rebellion committed by a segment of them. The rebellion of the Watchers, a cosmic transgression that blurred the lines between the spiritual and physical, unleashed a cascade of dire and catastrophic consequences upon the pre-flood world. Their actions profoundly altered the trajectory of early humanity, necessitating God's ultimate and devastating judgment, the Great Flood. The most immediate and visually shocking consequence was the birth of the Nephilim. Genesis 6-4 tersely identifies them as mighty men who were of old, the men of renown. Yet, as we've explored through the Book of Enoch and ancient Jewish tradition, this phrase carried far more chilling implications. These were not simply powerful human beings. They were often depicted as giants, grotesque hybrids, resulting from the unnatural union of fallen angels and human women. Their very existence signified a profound perversion of creation, a monstrous blending of spiritual and physical realms that was never intended by the Creator. The Nephilim are often portrayed as beings of immense physical strength, insatiable appetites, and violent inclinations. They consumed humanity's resources, engaged in cannibalism, and filled the earth with bloodshed and tyranny. Their presence alone was a massive contributing factor to the escalating violence and moral decay that gripped the antediluvian world. They were not merely powerful individuals. They were a living, breathing manifestation of profound spiritual corruption infecting the physical realm. Beyond the grotesque offspring, the Watchers committed a second, equally devastating sin. They imparted forbidden, illicit knowledge to humanity. This was not merely the teaching of practical skills, but the transmission of arcane, spiritual insights that God had withheld from mankind. As detailed in Enoch, they taught the secrets of metallurgy, not for building and cultivating, but for forging weapons of war, leading to unprecedented levels of conflict. They introduced the use of cosmetics and ornaments, fueling vanity and deception. They initiated humanity into the dark arts of astrology, divination, sorcery, and the cutting of roots for magical purposes. This influx of dark supernatural wisdom empowered humanity's sinful inclinations, leading to widespread injustice, sorcery, and profound spiritual defilement. It was a deliberate act of poisoning the human mind and spirit, accelerating their descent into moral chaos and further alienating them from God. The combined effect of the Nephilim's rampant violence and the widespread spiritual corruption fueled by the Watchers' illicit teachings created a world so utterly and irrevocably depraved that it literally grieved the heart of God. Genesis 6-5-7 captures the profound sorrow and righteous anger of the Creator. The Lord saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every intention of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. And the Lord regretted that he had made man on the earth, and it grieved him to his heart. So the Lord said, I will blot out man whom I have created from the face of the land, man and animals and creeping things and birds of the heavens, for I am sorry that I have made them. This was no arbitrary act of divine wrath. The Great Flood was a necessary global cleansing, a profound act of divine justice to purge the earth of this unprecedented level of spiritual and moral contamination. It was a cosmic reset, a catastrophic intervention designed to preserve the possibility of righteousness and salvation through Noah and his family, who alone found favor in God's eyes amidst the pervasive corruption. The intricate story of the Watchers and the Nephilim thus provides a robust and compelling explanation for the severity of God's judgment in the pre-flood world, highlighting the immense cosmic implications of angelic rebellion intersecting with human sin. The ancient narrative of the Watchers, a story of celestial rebellion and its earthly fallout, carries an enduring legacy that extends far beyond the dusty plains of antediluvian history. It offers profound insights into the nature of spiritual warfare, the reality of unseen forces, and the unwavering justice of God, themes that resonate deeply even in our modern world. Firstly, this narrative serves as an incredibly powerful cautionary tale for all spiritual beings, whether angelic or human. It vividly illustrates the devastating consequences of disobedience, pride, and the transgression of divinely established boundaries. Even incredibly powerful celestial beings, endowed with vast knowledge and entrusted with significant responsibilities, can fall catastrophically when they succumb to illicit desires and outright rebellion against God's holy will. This story is a solemn reminder for us to stay within our proper dwelling, to recognize our God-given limits, and to resist temptations that would lead us astray from His ordained path. It underscores that spiritual rebellion is met with certain and severe judgment. Secondly, the story of the Watchers emphatically underscores the reality of malevolent spiritual forces actively at work in the world. While many demons are generally understood as fallen angels who rebelled with Lucifer, the Watchers narrative introduces a specific, additional class of angels whose particular sin involved a direct physical perversion and a purposeful corruption on earth. This highlights the multifaceted, complex nature of spiritual evil and the diverse, insidious ways in which darkness seeks to corrupt God's creation. It teaches us that the world is not simply grappling with human sin and depravity, but with organized, intelligent, and powerful spiritual opposition that actively seeks to pervert, deceive, and destroy. The precise and specific imprisonment of the fallen Watchers, as explicitly detailed in the letters of Peter and Jude, serves as a powerful testament to God's ultimate justice and His unwavering sovereignty. Despite their audacious rebellion and the profound chaos they unleashed upon the earth, God remains in absolute control. These angels are bound, held in chains of gloomy darkness, and reserved for a final, inescapable judgment. This truth offers immense comfort and profound hope to believers in a world still grappling with pervasive evil and systemic injustice. It assures us that evil will not triumph indefinitely, that every act of rebellion against God's holy order will eventually face His righteous retribution. Moreover, understanding the Watchers provides a richer and more nuanced context for the pervasive ancient myths of giants, demigods, and powerful, often violent, heroic figures found in various cultures worldwide. Many scholars propose that these ancient stories, which often predate the biblical narrative as written down, might be distorted, folkloric echoes of a real, pre-flood event involving powerful beings and their monstrous offspring. The Genesis 6 account and the expansive narrative in the Book of Enoch could be the divinely preserved, accurate truth behind these widespread cultural memories of a chaotic, giant-infested past. This offers a compelling link between biblical truth and seemingly disparate global mythologies. The saga of the Watchers is far more than just an ancient, curious story. It is a profound lesson in the gravity of spiritual rebellion, the reality of unseen cosmic forces, and the necessity of divine judgment. It compels us to understand that our struggle in this world is not merely against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the cosmic powers over this present darkness, against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly places. This ancient narrative continues to echo throughout history, urging us to be vigilant, to discern spiritual realities, and to cling resolutely to the protection and ultimate authority of God our Creator and Redeemer. As we bring our comprehensive journey into the enigma of the Watchers to a close, we are left with a more robust understanding of their identity, their profound rebellion, and their enduring impact on theological thought. The seemingly brief verses in Genesis 6, when cross-referenced with ancient Jewish traditions and illuminated by the explicit confirmations in the New Testament, reveal a pre-flood world far more complex and spiritually charged than often imagined. The Watchers were, in essence, a class of angelic beings given a sacred trust, a mandate to observe, and perhaps even to guard. Yet, a significant portion of them tragically chose to abuse that trust, abandoning their assigned realm and contaminating the human world with illicit unions and forbidden knowledge. This cosmic rebellion and its monstrous offspring, the Nephilim, contributed immensely to the pervasive wickedness that grieved God's heart and necessitated the global cleansing of the flood. Their story serves as a profound testament to the reality of angelic free will and the devastating consequences of spiritual rebellion. It underscores that evil is not merely a human construct. It is a powerful, intelligent force that operates across spiritual dimensions. Yet, within this dark narrative shines the radiant truth of God's perfect justice and His unwavering sovereignty. The fallen watchers are bound, awaiting their final judgment, a powerful assurance that no evil, no rebellion, no darkness will ultimately escape His divine reckoning. Furthermore, the story of the Watchers, especially when contrasted with the faithful holy watchers in Daniel, reminds us that the spiritual realm is not monolithic. There are indeed faithful angels who serve God's purposes, actively working to fulfill His decrees and execute His will, bringing His judgment and protecting His people. Ultimately, the revelation of the Watcher's story compels us to view our own world with renewed spiritual discernment. It encourages us to be aware of the unseen battles that rage around us, to understand the depths of sin and rebellion, both human and angelic, and to recognize the absolute necessity of God's justice. But above all, it points us to the enduring power and faithfulness of our God, the true and ever-vigilant watcher, who meticulously observes, faithfully judges, and ultimately triumphs over all the forces of darkness. In Him alone, we find safety, truth, and the promise of a world where righteousness and peace will finally reign supreme. Please take a moment to subscribe to this channel if you're passionate about uncovering the deeper revelations of God's Word and challenging the narratives that have kept us from the fullness of His truth. If you found strength, clarity, or encouragement in what you heard tonight, don't forget to like this video and share your thoughts in the comments below. Your engagement helps more people discover these truths, and it may just be the spark someone else needs to reclaim their own divine identity.